As of this week, the long arm of the U.S. taxman is reaching into Canada, and he's getting help from Canadian banks, who now must work to comply with the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. That is an American law that the Canadian government agreed to enforce under threat of economic sanctions. It requires Canadian banks to hand over information about clients with ties to the United States. The stated purpose is to catch tax evaders hiding money offshore. But McGill law professor Allison Christians told us Canadians with dual citizenship will be collateral damage.
My primary worry is that thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of Canadian citizens will be handed over to the U.S. for assessment of tax debts by that country. Many or perhaps most of them will have no idea what's happening to them when they get a scary-looking debt claim letter from the IRS.
Christian says the dual citizens are supposed to have been filing tax returns in the U.S. all along. Most of them don't, so FATCA will help the taxman find them.
The vast majority, if you filed your tax forms, you would actually owe no tax. But you can't not file just because there's going to be a zero at the end. So that means you have to get an accountant, you have to get your paperwork done, and you have to file. And if you don't, the failure to file, even if no tax is owed, it's the failure to file that hits you with the penalty.
It's Allison Christians, professor of law at McGill University. Now, she also told us that a group called the Alliance for the Defense of Canadian Sovereignty is building a fund to challenge the law in Canadian courts. It's already getting donations, including from my next guest. Kathleen is a Canada-U.S. dual citizen who lives here in Ottawa. We've agreed not to use her last name because she does not want to attract the attention of tax authorities with her story. She's with me now in studio. Hi there.
Hi.
So people become dual citizens in different ways, of course. What was your tie to the United States?
Well, my Canadian-born parents moved to the United States when my father got offered a job teaching in a university there. And while they were there, I was born. And unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out. And I returned home to Canada with my mother when I was about 1 year old.
Okay, so it was a 1 year period that you were in the States.
Yes, and because I was actually born on U.S. soil, that makes me an American. And because my parents were both Canadian, that makes me a Canadian. Gotcha.
Okay, so and a lot of people in your situation don't even know that the United States expects them to be filing taxes. How did you find out?
Well, first of all, it's logical for people not to know that because the United States is the only developed country in the world that taxes people who don't live in the country and don't earn in that country. I found out quite by accident. My husband and I were redoing our wills, and just as we were leaving, the lawyer said, you should really look into filing your U.S. taxes. And the reason he said that was because during the course of our conversation, it just happened to come out that I was born in the U.S. So I actually didn't really pay much attention to what he said because it didn't make any sense to me. A few months went by, and then I just decided, well, maybe I should look into that. And so I got on the internet and discovered citizenship-based taxation and FATCA. And kind of got the shock of my life. I didn't believe it at first. And when I told my husband, he didn't believe me either. He said, you must be imagining things that can't be true. If that's really the case and the world's a crazy place, it doesn't make any sense.
Because as a result, how much could we be talking about that you'd owe?
Well, my understanding is based on some of the foreign earned income exclusions and deductions and tax treaties that we have between the two countries that I probably wouldn't owe them any taxes.
All right.
But the problem is not so much that. It's the fact that I have not been in the U.S. tax system my entire life. You can't just say, hi, Uncle Sam, and start filing 1 year. You have to find a way to get back into the system.
And that costs money.
That costs a lot of money, and not only do you have to file tax returns, but you're supposed to be filing something called foreign bank account reports. So any bank accounts that you have outside of the United States are considered foreign, including the ones that I have in Canada where I live.
Because they're viewing them through the eyes of you being an American.
Exactly. So the penalties for not filing these foreign bank account reports, and basically you're supposed to file one for every bank account you have over $10,000. Which is not hard to have when you're in your 50s like I am and you've been, living in Canada all your life. The penalties for not filing these foreign bank account reports are, I believe, 50% of the value of the account per year up to 6 years. So effectively 300% of the value of your account for willfully non-filing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what have you done then? When you found this out, like, how do you try to deal with this?
Well, I suppose it wouldn't be that much of a problem if the Canadian government hadn't signed an agreement to basically hand over my bank account details to the IRS, because they would have otherwise no way of knowing what I have in the bank. But now that they know this, they can assess those penalties because they'll know how much money I have in the bank.
I know there will be people listening saying, well, why doesn't she just renounce the U.S. citizenship, and that would be the easy way to end it? But that doesn't end it, does it?
No, you can renounce your citizenship, but that does not end your tax obligation from the past. You still have to catch up on past tax returns and foreign bank account reports.
And for you, that's decades.
Well, no, actually, in order to renounce, you only have to commit to 5 years' worth of back reporting. But 5 years' worth of back reporting is an expensive, complicated venture when even things like that we take for granted here as being normal, like Canadian mutual funds, are considered to be passive foreign income corporations in the United States because they don't want Americans investing outside of the United States. So they make you jump through hoops if you're going to invest in these things, to the point where you're spending more on the reporting and the taxation than is worth even owning them.
Given the original intention, though, of this law, do you think they will be pursuing people like yourself?
Well, a lot of people have been complaining worldwide. They've had the opportunity to change the law to exclude people that aren't resident in the United States, but they haven't. They've refused to do that. So that tells me that they're looking for more than just people who live in the United States hiding money offshore that's not been taxed.
Officially, then, you're breaking the law.
American law, yes.
In the United States. There's a new law that's supposed to help the U.S. government find people like you, as we mentioned. How is this affecting you? Do you ever go to the United States?
I haven't been to the United States since I found out about this, but I'm not a frequent traveler to the U.S. anyway, so it's not really putting a damper in my plans too much, other than from here on in, I'm not going to be going to the United States ever again.
Because your fear is that if you were to head there...
Yeah, that potentially, who knows what could happen, especially if I'm making a big deal talking to people on the radio in Canada, and yeah, who knows? So it's just not worth it to cross the border.
But you think at the border they could look through the list somehow and see?
Maybe. I mean, actually, I'm not even technically supposed to travel to the U.S. on a Canadian passport. Americans are supposed to travel to the U.S. on a U.S. passport. I don't have a U.S. passport. So my understanding is they're starting to, that's been a law for a while, I guess, but they're starting to enforce that more now. So you take a chance that way if you travel to the U.S. that they give you a hard time at the border for not having the right passport.
How do you feel about the way you've been treated by both governments here?
I feel I'm being attacked by a foreign government because that's what the United States government is to me. It's foreign. I don't even remember living there. And I feel betrayed by the government that I pay taxes to and that I've been a citizen of since the day I was born, and yet it's not protecting me at all.
Now, I mentioned you've been helping to fund this legal challenge that's in the works. Have you been doing anything else to try and get either government to act on the issue?
Since I found out, like I said, about 1.5 years ago, I've written lots of letters to lots of different government representatives. I've talked to a couple journalists who've written some articles on FATCA. I've been involved in 3 public anti-FATCA demonstrations.
But I imagine it might be hard to gather support from people here in Canada if they're worried that the tax authorities could find out that they're one of those people.
Yeah, that's a big problem. People don't want to come out. Yeah, people are afraid. I mean, I'm afraid too, but I mean, that's why my last name isn't going to be on this broadcast. But I mean, people have to do something about it. You can't just sit and wait.
Kathleen, I almost guarantee we will get feedback from other listeners on this. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Kathleen is a dual citizen of Canada and the United States. She has donated to a fund for a legal challenge of the U.S. Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. We did hold back her last name at her request to avoid alerting authorities to the tax situation. If you'd like to learn more about the legal challenge of FATCA, there is a website. It's the Alliance for the Defense of Canadian Sovereignty, and there's a link up at cbc.ca/all-in-a-day.